Hey, what's up guys, Jed here. Is intermittent fasting sustainable long term? Good question, let's talk about it. But before we get into the video, make sure you hit that subscribe button so that you stay up to date whenever I post a new video. Is intermittent fasting sustainable long-term? That's a fantastic question. And the answer to that really depends on what you want to do personally. Do you want to lose weight temporarily? And by that I mean you're trying to prepare yourself for like a wedding, trying to fit into that wedding dress or suit if you are a male, or you're trying to get fit for some kind of competition, or you're just doing it out of the blue because you're like, hey, I kind of feel like losing weight, let's do it. Or are you really trying to make a permanent lifestyle change and keep that weight off for good? Now, I personally like to permanently stay at my ideal weight. That's my preference, and that's also my recommendation for a majority of you guys that are watching me. But again, like I said, if you're someone who's just trying to do this temporarily, then going back to our question, is intermittent fasting sustainable long term? If that's you, where you only want to do this short term, then obviously intermittent fasting will not be sustainable long term. So I kind of just want to use myself as an example first to sort of help you guys decide whether or not you would like to do intermittent fasting over the course of many years. So I've been doing intermittent fasting ever since I was 17 years old. I'm 25 now, so that's, if we do the math, 8 years. Did intermittent fasting help me lose weight? Yes. Does it still continue to help me lose weight? Yes. Do I still do intermittent fasting? Yes. So overall, for me, intermittent fasting is sustainable because I'm able to adjust, and it's sort of just this strategy that I'm able to use 24/7 whenever I want. And over the course of 8 years, I've never had any struggles. Well, if I really had to include any struggle, that would only be in the beginning. But besides that, I've had no struggle whatsoever doing intermittent fasting. Now, the only thing I will mention is if we really wanted to look at intermittent fasting not being sustainable, it would have to be intermittent fasting and daily occasion. And by that, I mean sometimes the family wants to eat out. Sometimes you have to attend a wedding or some sort of event. Sometimes you're just not feeling it that day, right? So when these things happen, that's when it sort of becomes a problem, and then you can't do intermittent fasting. You would either have to mess up that day and then continue on the next following days, or just not have anything to do with the intermittent fasting. And I understand that a majority of people are like that, including myself. Even now, that always happens to me. But for me personally, I'm still able to fit in intermittent fasting along with a combination of tracking calories. As I say time and time again in other videos, that intermittent fasting and caloric restriction have to go together in order for it to work. So once I fully understood that, doing intermittent fasting for the past couple of years has never been a problem. If I attended a family occasion, or if I went somewhere random where it kind of interrupts my intermittent fasting routine, as long as I understood that I have to stay in a caloric deficit, then realistically you won't ever have any problems. So to be honest, it really just comes down to how willing you are to stick to it, if that makes sense. Because if you really look at your lifestyle, for example, if you're someone who doesn't exactly eat the healthiest things in the world, like, I don't know, donuts, it's the same as asking yourself, are you willing to stop eating donuts temporarily, or are you willing to stop eating donuts forever? It's the same thing with intermittent fasting. Are you willing to do it forever, or are you just willing to do it for a couple of months? Those same questions are connected to the question of, is intermittent fasting sustainable long term? And other friends and family that I've talked with also agree with me that it is sustainable, and that the only time it's not is when you're not willing to stick to it. So I hope that makes sense. So going back to what I said earlier, if there's ever a time where you're doing 16-8, for example, where you have a 16-hour fasting window and of course an 8-hour eating window, and let's just say you accidentally broke your fast at the wrong time, does that mean you're no longer going to lose weight? No. Why? Because like I said, what needs to be done is you need to be in a caloric deficit. So even though you didn't do intermittent fasting properly, as long as you're in that caloric deficit, it'll still work. So in a sense, you can't really say that intermittent fasting didn't work. But of course, I always advise doing your best. So with that said, going back to our first question, is intermittent fasting sustainable long term? Of course. That's all I gotta say about that. If you guys are interested in learning more about weight loss and intermittent fasting, be sure to check out my last video where I talk about intermittent fasting and the keto diet. Alright guys, if you enjoyed this video, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't already, and tap that notification bell so that you never miss out on any future videos. Also, don't forget to leave a like and comment down below letting me know. Do you guys think intermittent fasting is sustainable? And with that said, I will see you guys next time.